I'm super excited to be here today. This is one of my favorite topics. I could spend a half a day on it, but I'll try to do it in an hour. A couple of things I want to start with is take what you want and leave the rest. Okay, there are as many ways to write as there are writers. So if something I say speaks to you, then use it, consider it. If it doesn't, that's okay. So I just wanted, if anybody comes in, if a speaker comes in and says, this is the only way to do something, just run to the nearest exit. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to talk about things that worked for me. I'm going to talk a little bit about, what I'm going to talk about is taking your writing to the next level. So I'm going to talk a little bit about decisions you need to make and then choices you need to make. And none of these are right or wrong. It just is what works with your life right now. So I sold 15 books. I mean, I've published 15 books now. My mom has Alzheimer's disease and I'm a caregiver now. So I backed off of publishing the last couple of years and I'm actually doing some other things. But I sold 1 million copies, which is kind of cool just to say. I mean, it's not as many as a lot of people, but it's a lot of books. 1 million people have read my books. That's kind of cool. And I don't know them. It's even cooler. But there are things I learned along the way that I want to share with you all. The first thing I want to talk about is treating writing as a business. So you're going to have to choose why you want to write. Some people just want to write, and that's cool. Some people want to write and sell books to publishers. Some people want to sell books to publishers and self-publish. In other words, hybrid writing. And so you need to know what you want to do as a writer. So that's kind of your first thing. And you don't have to figure it out at the beginning, but you do need to decide at some point. The first thing I'm going to say to you all is be a lifelong learner. Okay. You and your critique group, if you create one, and I was excited to hear about the critique groups, I have stories to tell. That's probably over an adult beverage, potentially with a confection associated with it. Anyway, but I will answer questions about critique groups. I have a fabulous one now. But your critique group and you all need to learn and you need to challenge yourself. So even now, I meet with a couple of other authors, published authors. We meet weekly and we alternate between reading a craft book and discussing it and between reading typically an Amazon bestseller that's got like 10,000 plus reviews and try to figure out what made people want to read that book. Because when you get 10,000 reviews, you're talking major word of mouth. You're not talking just any old book. And so I'm constantly trying to learn. I have 3 favorite books I'm going to share with you. I have a ton of favorite books, but my 3 top books that I love are Story by Robert McKee. That's a kind of a screenwriting book, but it's absolutely fabulous. His talk about characters, there's just a lot in there that's nowhere else. Oldie but a goodie. If you guys don't have Dwight Swain's Techniques of the Selling Writer, if you don't know about scene and sequel, you need to learn about scene and sequel. It's really great about the building blocks within a scene of the story. There's the big picture, which is the arc of the story. Then there's the arc of the scene. And if you can figure out the scenes, you've got the building blocks of a good story. And then my last favorite book is Donald Moss, Writing the Breakout Novel, to take yourself to the next level. Donald Moss is a very well-known literary agent, and his job is to look for breakout novels. And he has a breakout novel, both the book and the workbook, and they're really, you need them both. But if you actually can go into that workbook and work it through it and take it seriously, it'll make you think hard and take your writing to the next level. So those are the 3 big ones I would suggest. If you have other, I have a big list that I recommend, but those are the 3. Second thing you need to do on treating your writing as a business is to discover your process, whatever that is. That's a plotter, if that's a pantster, if that's a planner, which is halfway between a plotter and a pantster, whatever you want to call what you do. You need to figure out what your process is. what goes with that is to figure out what you do well. So I do a few things well. I do deep character well. I do turning points well. I do romantic conflict well. And I didn't think I did this well, but according to my readers, I do pacing well. That was not one of my things that I thought I did well, but it is, evidently is. You need to maximize your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. So if you do not, if snappy dialogue is not your thing, then writing some snappy chick lit, it might not be the best choice. If you are not a very lyrical writer, maybe literary fiction's not for you. Doesn't mean you can't do it, by the way. Doesn't mean you can't teach yourself how to do it. But I would take advantage of whatever you do well and grab that and hold on to it, because that's a gift. And you should take advantage of the gifts you've been given. I'm a plotter, kind of. And so I have a process that I use, and I've tried other processes. I had a friend who's a final draft writer. And well, I have a friend who's a final draft writer. I mean, she finishes a sentence and it's perfect, and then she goes on to the next one. So she was writing this great stuff and sending it through our critique group. And I'm like, I wish I could do that. My stuff is kind of not all there when I send my stuff through the critique group. So I tried to write like her. My pacing went to, whatever. That's just not the way I write. The way I write is the following. I get the idea typically from a character or a place or crime. So I'd write romantic thrillers for the most part. And then I go through a process where I explore the character, and I use what's called Discovering Story Magic. I've given that workshop at SWW before. If you Google it, there's some handouts that you can buy for like $25 that take you through a process. But it's exploring the character and then looking at turning points. That would be, if you're 3-act structure, it would be looking at those end of the act and structure. And then I fill it all in with a storyboard. And that's basically what I do. And I do all that. And then I add something called the W diagram, which helps me not lose one of my characters. And that's just my own. Again, it's tools that I use to help me do the things I don't necessarily do well. And then I write the synopsis. And I write a pretty short synopsis, about 2 pages. I have a formula for it. The reason I write the synopsis is because when I was writing really fast at one point, I was writing 3 books a year. And I was writing I call it my pregnant princess book. I was writing my pregnant princess book. And so as I was writing this, I turned in the proposal, which my publisher accepted. And then I was writing the synopsis, and I realized that I couldn't finish the book without them going to Europe. And I was writing for Harlequin Intrigue at the time. They don't like people going to Europe. They like people in Texas. So what do you do? So I called on my editor and I said, do you think I could take them to Europe? And I just don't have enough books under my belt for them to let me do anything interesting. So I had to start over. I start the book over because what I was doing wasn't going to work. If I'd written that synopsis before I'd started the book, I would have known, because once you start writing the synopsis and making it go through to the end, you can realize mistakes. This is a plotter thing. This is not a planner thing. But guess what? All these pieces of the story, the turning points and all that, you still are going to have at the end of your book. So it's good to know about them, even if you don't use it before you plot. So that's what I do, just FYI. I can write about my first draft, then I start writing. And I write 3 drafts. The first draft is about 75% of the words. It's mostly blocking and dialogue and a little bit of emotion. And then I take it through a second level and a third level. I add texture and then I activate it. I'm going to talk about activation later, but that's my process. It takes me to get through that 75%. If I'm writing normally, it's 10,000 words a month that I write. I write an hour and a half before work. I do have a day job, and I write on the days I don't work, I write 4 hours. My goal is 1,000 words before work and 2,000 words on the days that I don't write. And that's 10,000. That's 10,000 words a week. I said a month, didn't I? 10,000 words a week, which allows me to write the draft of a single title in about 6 weeks-ish, something like that. So, and then it takes me about 3 months to 4 months to revise. So I can do 2 shorter books to say 60,000 words and a single title in a year if I'm going full throttle. And that being said, I have a friend who writes 1 book a year. I have a friend who writes a book every 18 months. You find what you can do and you don't compare yourself for everybody else. That doesn't work. Investment of time. You need to make writing a priority. Decide what's important and make those choices, right? So I decided to start getting up at 5 in the morning and write for an hour and a half before work. I know people who write from 10 to 2. I know people who write from 4 to 8 or 4 to 7. I know people who have families and she and her husband, they split time. Every other day she helps the kids with homework and takes care of the kids. Every other day he does. And then on Sunday they have family day. And that's how they work it out. And it doesn't mean you can't chill about it. I personally write every day because it's super easy not to. And once you stop the habit, it's kind of like working out, right? Once you've done a week, it takes like a month to get back there where you were before. It's kind of the same thing with writing. I also do a lot of goal setting. What kind of writer do you want to be? What kind of writer are you? Do you want traditional? Do you want self-pub? Do you want hybrid? Do you want to do marketing? If you're going to be self-publisher, you need to market. You need to love it. You need to find it cool. You need to be interested in it. I have a friend who's a beautiful writer and she tried to self-publish stuff and she just hates marketing. And she just, so that's not what she wants. So she wants a traditional publisher. She doesn't want to deal with the market. And that's a choice you can make. Or you may be writing for joy, and that's okay too. But you've got to, how far, how hard do you want to go? A successful writer is willing to do that which the unsuccessful writer is not willing to do. What are you willing to do? Right? How much are you willing to study? How much are you to look? How much are you willing to slog through super successful books that are terrible? But figure out why they sold. Just because I don't like them doesn't mean they don't have value. If you can, get together with other writers and figure out what are the strongest parts of your work, because I will tell you right now, you have no clue what they are. It's extremely difficult to know. I knew a few things about my strongest work, but it was better to hear it from someone who's read my stuff, because I don't think we're always the best judge of our writing. In fact, typically, if I'm really worried about a scene, my critique group's like, that's awesome. And if I think my scene is awesome, they're like, eh. So I'm worried. When I like something, I get a little worried about it. What are your weakest areas? I don't want you to belabor that, but if your market, genre fiction, whatever, if you hate to write kissy, lovey, gooey scenes, don't write romance. Sorry, it's not a good idea. If you don't like a lot of dead bodies, don't write thrillers, So, yeah. And then what kind of work would you most love to do? And what kind of career would you most like to have? Who out there is a career that you would want? So my favorite author is Sharon Sala. Sharon Sala writes romantic suspense with unbelievably levels of emotion. I've cried in her books. My favorite book of hers is called Jackson Rule. And she's amazing. She's a New York Times bestselling author, but she writes the kind of books I want to write. She cares about people. She teaches a lot. She has the kind of career I would love to have. And find somebody you want to emulate, and what do they do? And set goals and write them down. Okay, so that's kind of the business beginning. A few marketing, I'm leaving craft for last so I can spend more time on it. So marketing tips and tricks. Okay, I'm going to tell you something that's sad but true. Writers are awful marketing people, and they have bad decisions, generally speaking. We do not pick the best covers. Our blurbs are too involved and talk about the heart of the book when that's not what readers care about. We're terrible. So if I had my druthers, I'd have somebody else write my blurb. I would have somebody else write even my synopsis if I were sending it off, because I'm in love with everything in my book because it's all amazing. And you need to understand what readers want. So we're not very good at this stuff. So you either have to learn or you have to count on other people to help you. Some of the marketing tips though, to write really great books, you need to understand yourself really well. So for example, identify your own emotional cues. So for me, I have themes that go through my stories. I have a lot of things about masks, like people not being who they appear to be. I have a lot of stuff emotionally about betrayal. I spend a lot of time on those emotions. Got a lot of different stories and I look at them different ways, but those two things come through the biggest. Those are the things that come through the biggest. And you know what? You're supposed to write what you know, remember? That doesn't necessarily mean write lawyer books if you're a lawyer, but it does mean write the emotions you know. And that can give you universal appeal. And so because you have authority in that particular emotion, look at the book that was easiest to finish, the book that was hardest to finish. Look at your all-time favorite books. And I bet if you looked at the emotions, either that you would see some interesting commonalities. So that's something you can try. The third thing I would talk about on marketing is one-liners. You need to test your story's strength. And I try to do this before I write the book. Sometimes it's not possible. So I'm going to read a one-liner that was in Publishers Marketplace a few years ago. A woman who is determined to find her kidnapped son and suspected in her husband's death is forced to team with an embattled SWAT cop who is assigned to prove her guilt. What do you know about that story? I've got two characters. One loves the other. She's suspected of her husband's death, and she's forced to team with somebody who thinks that she's guilty. So you've got conflict already sitting there in one sentence. If it takes you 5 paragraphs to find the conflict, you haven't honed your story. And if you hone your story, that means you can layer that throughout the story. Give you another one. This one was a award finalist. A woman desperate to protect her young son after he witnesses a murder is forced to team with a disgraced Texas sheriff who her family framed. Right? So I've got now these are both romances, by the way. So I've got romantic conflict because these people believe different things. I have conflict because one person is going to try to put them in jail and but they're forced to team together to work together. And in both those cases happen to be to help a child. So those are if you can put your blurb into one sentence and keep focused, then you know as you're writing scenes, which scenes maybe don't support that idea or that story. Here's another one. A woman discovers her perfect husband is a cold-blooded international assassin and is forced to put the lives of her and her young son in the hands of a man who lives behind his own lies. Blah, 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 blah. Not nearly as good. Book didn't do as well. It's still actually kind of a cool book. It's like a B-movie actor who's actually a spy. Kind of James Bondy. It's kind of fun. Didn't do as well. Because I had too many layers of things going on. So what I'm talking about in some ways is I incorporated conflict in those examples, but one of the other things you need to look at is high concept. And this is something I'm doing now. I'm actually trying to give my books a high concept before I even start writing, instead of having it be so hard. So I'm going to recommend a book by Lori Wilde called The Key to Dynamic Fiction That Sells. She writes about high concept. High concept in some ways is the TV guide blurb. But the big test for high concept, because a lot of people talk about it to me, is that you have a visual picture about what the book's about. You can see it even from the blurb. So example, a cocky cop must find a way to save people stranded on a city bus that will explode if it slows before 55 miles an hour. Okay, you guys all know what movie that is, or most of you probably do. But you know what's going to happen in that story, yes? You don't know how it's going to happen, but you kind of get a sense of what's going on. Here's another one. When a young wife discovers the husband she's convicted of murdering isn't dead, she escapes custody to track him down and kill him. it's like, why wouldn't you want to watch that? I mean, you have this visual sense of what's going to be happening. If you can get your story to that, or even something shorter. So one of the things that I learned, I was at the Book Expo of America in New York City. That was like my first taste of like cool authorness. I had a limo pick me up at the airport. It was really cool. Anyway, I had these publishing PR people, and they said, "What's your book about?" And I'm like, well, it's, and they're like, no, quick. I got to be able to tell people who are passing by so I could drag them in and give them a book for free. They had towers of my books. So I came up with this on the fly, and I realized it was powerful. A female SWAT team sniper who is being stalked. That's what it's about. That's kind of interesting. She's a sniper. She can shoot people, but she's being stalked. So that's kind of a cool story. Another one that I have, a woman, this one is for the one that I told you earlier. A woman is on the run from her assassin husband. It's okay. Here's another one. Dozens of brilliant kids who mastered a video game are disappearing and no one noticed until now. That one's kind of interesting. So what I'm saying to you is you've got to be able to, within a few, because an elevator pitch is not the one thing you memorize that's 3 sentences long. That is not an elevator pitch. An elevator pitch is something that someone can get off the elevator and remember. That means it's like 7 words, right? 10 words or something. Yes.
Would you want to make your pitch like, say, in the form of a question?
I think you sure could. I think on the marketing fragment type, I don't even have it as a sentence. It's just, this is something cool that happened. But you definitely could. What happens if X, right? What happens if a bus can't go below 55 miles an hour? I think you could. I think whatever speaks to people, and if that's an easier way, but if you don't need the what if, a school bus can't go below 55 miles an hour or it'll blow up. Maybe what if, maybe not. So I think you could do it. I think starting with a question is a great idea. So I think that's great. And I didn't tell people the question was, can you make a fragment in the form of, can you make a blurb in the form of a question? The other thing you want to do is brand yourself. And that is about reader expectations. People know when they're going to pick up a Robin Perini book. It's going to be a romantic thriller. It's going to be fast paced. I may have lots of bodies, but I'm probably not going to tell you, I'm not going to be completely graphic. About exactly how I kill them, because I'm more of a female writer than a male writer. I was asking my dad, because he reads a lot of thrillers, what's the difference between my books and, say, Jack Reacher books, right? And he said, well, you tell me about how the person feels about killing someone, and Jack Reacher tells me exactly how he does it with precision per inch. It's like, it's going to, now I do occasionally use the 20 pounds of pressure to crack a trachea. I will do that sometimes, but I don't actually tell you how it feels in my hands. So there you go. But I do care about how my hair feels about that. So I think there's some truth to that. The last thing about marketing is you need to identify your circles of interest. And circles of interest are connections. So for example, my sniper book, there were a lot of gun people who like to shoot, right? Who were interested in my my sniper stuff because I have some details about guns. My dad's a competitive shooter, so I grew up with that. My best-selling book is called Forgotten Secrets, and it has a character in it who has Alzheimer's disease, which is what my mom has, and it's in honor of her. And so Alzheimer's groups are very interested in that. And what happened with that book is people would, from work and everybody else would email me and say, well, they would say, I learned so much that my grandmother's going through this, my mother's going through that, my father did that, and how the family handled it, etc. So they passed it along. group of moms, group of families, small towns, different things that are in your circle. If you're talking about history, like go to the history, go to history groups, become involved in circles of marketing circles. They're your areas of interest anyway, if you're writing about it. So that's an interesting, let's see, I'm looking at the clock. Okay. So anyway, back to branding really quickly. I have friends who wrote historicals and contemporaries and whatnot. And that's great because that fed their soul and they wanted to do that. But by doing that, you also divide your readership because the people who read certain books may not read the others. So instead of having out one book a year, you maybe have a book out every other year, or 2 a year. 2 books will be 2 different. So it's really your choice. But John Grisham did this. I don't know if you guys recall, he wrote a book, he did his legal thrillers. Everybody loved his legal thrillers. He went off that path and they didn't like it. Their readers got a little perturbed with it. So, and you can make that choice, right? I'm going to be writing a cozy mystery series with an Alzheimer's patient, and it's going to be written as a fundraiser for the Alzheimer's Association. I'm going to give all the proceeds to that. So that the cozy mysteries don't have sex in them. And well, I don't do a lot of sex in my books. They do have sex. So I'm going back and forth on whether or not to use a pen name so that people don't pick that other book up. If I were writing erotica and young adult, definitely use a pen name, right? You do. So you can make choices, but when you brand that way, you're going to have to then keep up more than one identity. And I know authors who do that. So you guys know Sarah Baker, most of you. She has a plethora of, I love that word, plethora. I actually have a word I use in every book. I use cacophony in every book just because I like it. I can only use it once though. Okay, let's talk about craft. Craft tips. So I'll answer questions about marketing, but one of the things to take your writing to the next level is to think about your book as a business, if that's what you choose to do. That's not what you not choose to do, it's fine. Your craft is a different animal. So I've got a little quote by Anton Chekhov. Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass, right? So there are a couple of key points, and I have like a dozen of these, but I'm going to focus on the ones that I think are the most important. You need to have motivated drama, okay? What that means is that there's an action that happens, conflict results from that action. Jack and Jill want to go up the hill to fetch a pail of water. Except as they go up the hill, Jack fell down. Conflict. Okay. Emotions result from conflict. Oh no, we're not going to get up the hill. We spilled half the water. Our whole family's going to die of thirst. Whatever the result is, we're sad. We're upset. Jack is hurt. He's crying. Were you just going to go back down the hill and just leave the water? Or are we going to suffer, stand up, and Jill helps Jack so he's not too dizzy, and they go up and they finish their task. And that's your choice. And then you have the new action, right? You have the new action plan after that choice. And this is a circle: action, conflict, emotion, choice. And that's how your story works. If you just keep throwing like crazy things at Jack and Jill wanted to go up the hill, and then a bomb exploded and a helicopter happened, and then a big earthquake happened, and all these things get thrown at it. It's Perils of Pauline, and it becomes boring and uninteresting. What's really interesting is if your characters get themselves into trouble. And that's done by choices under pressure. So making choices under pressure, put your characters under pressure. This works for memoirs or anything else. I'm doing a nonfiction book right now about a true event. And I'm looking for the drama. I'm looking for the conflict. That's what you need in order to make books and stories interesting. So let's talk. Let me give you a quote. Actions don't drive the story. Actions drive emotions. Emotions drive the story. And that's from Laura Baker, and one of my favorite people and favorite writers. Okay. Here's an example. There's a teenage or 19-year-old girl in a flimsy negligee in a big, huge house. Happens to be across from a maximum security penitentiary. And she's sitting there and it's raining and thundering outside and the lights go out. Now, usually when this happens in a B movie, you're like, okay. And then there's a knock down the stairs. And what does she do? She goes down the stairs. Everybody's like, no, don't go down the stairs. I'm like, go down the stairs. You are too stupid to live. Seriously. Do not have a TSTL, too stupid to live heroin. So, however, let's change it up a little bit. She lives there, but there's a little boy that lives down 2 doors down. And that little boy has a really angry dad who drinks a lot. And sometimes that little boy kind of sneaks into the basement window. And when she finds him down there, he's usually got a lot of bruises and he hasn't eaten for a couple of days. Now she goes down the stairs. Now she's brave because she's going to save that little boy. But the same scene, you've made all the difference because you've got motivated drama and not just any old drama. Motivate your drama. That will take you to the next level. Okay. Show, don't tell. How many of you guys have heard that? Show, don't tell. All right. I'm going to give you a secret way to show, don't tell emotions. I want everybody to write down an emotion, a strong emotion. I'll give you a few: joy, betrayal, fear. Some more, guys. Frustration, sadness, anger, self-doubt. Okay. Write that emotion down. Okay. Now I'm going to want you to spend about 2 minutes. And I want you to show that emotion to me and not use that word. Do not use that word. Write about 2 to 3 sentences and do not show me that word. Do not tell me that word. Those of you online, please do it too. Wrap it up. Spelling doesn't count. Okay. Does anybody want to share? Does anybody want to share one? I will try to guess the emotion.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. Who's that?
Jay Brooks.
Hey, great. Please read.
Okay, his face flushed as he snatched the drink from her hand and threw it in the sink.
That's very good, actually. It's very focused. What do you guys think? It's anger, frustration, contempt? There's some words out.
Okay, I have one on what I suggested, self-doubt. And this is someone speaking to the main character.
Okay.
All you want is to go back to your lab so you can hide from society for the rest of your life.
Okay, so it was all you want to do is go back to your lab so you can hide yourself for the rest of your life.
What?
Okay. So does anybody have any ideas on what that might be emotionally? It's tough to do something so fast.
Depression?
Depression. Okay, interesting.
Or maybe shame.
Oh, and what are we doing?
Shame. So they're swirling around your self-doubt. Here's what's interesting about this exercise. So let's see, the first person, I'm sorry.
They want to play Scrabble. Okay.
Yeah, what was your original emotion?
Mine was anger.
It was anger. The more complex the emotion, the more you need to show.
You'll bring munchies, not lunch?
If you're,
Okay.
please
floor
hold
was
the conversation,
cold
stop the
and hard.
conversation.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
We've got some of the microphones live. You might check and see if you're muted if you don't want to be talking. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so where I was going with that, so that you would need probably one little more thing to go to from self-doubt to shame or something else to really define it more. So on the one where about the drinking, I said maybe contempt or anger. So anger was the more simple one. If you wanted to go for contempt, you need a little bit more of another line of dialogue, right? On something that was, I can't believe you are doing this again, that sort of thing. So what's important about emotion is don't use the emotion words. Don't use them. Just simply show them. Don't use them. If you're using anger and fear and all those words, it's not that you can't use them, but try not to use them, because then what your job is you're making your reader feel them. And that's way more powerful. Okay. The more generic those emotions are, the easier they are going to be to convey. But if it's not strong enough or it doesn't have enough specificity, they're going to take away the wrong emotion. It's going to be ambiguous. If it's ambiguous, it's not as powerful. Does that make sense? Okay. Think about that for a minute, and I'm going to do some more on show and tell in a second. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is openings. Openings are very interesting. No matter who your first reader is, whether it's an agent, an editor, a reader, somebody looking on Amazon to buy your book, you basically have 3 paragraphs to hook them. That's it. You don't have any more than that. They used to say 3 pages. You don't have 3 pages. I was speaking with my agent and she told me sometimes within 1 paragraph, but for sure within 3 paragraphs, she knows if she's interested in the book. She knows if they have a voice. She knows what their level of writing is. She knows. It matters. The second thing one of my editors told me is the 4th chapter is the most important, because we edit the heck out of the first 3 chapters, right? Do we not? Fair? Yeah. She knows if the 4th chapter is good, that the whole book is probably going to be good. But there's a huge drop off between the first 3 and the 4th one. You have to polish your book throughout the story. And some people have to do it more than others. I'm one of those people, by the way, just saying. So I'm not going to do this as an exercise, but I am going to suggest you take it home. It was a cold and rainy day. Someone is let's see okay. It was a cold and rainy day. Lissa is walking down the street, going home for the evening. Yawn. Okay, so this is the original beginning of that story, the opening. The sting of frozen rain pricked Lissa's Cafferty's cheeks. Another attack she couldn't prevent. She hurried from the L station toward her small Chicago apartment. If only she could pull her hood over her head, duck down, and avoid the piercing needles of ice on her face. But then she'd lose her peripheral vision. She couldn't afford to allow comfort to trump safety. Not now, not ever. Okay, so there's some things that I did in that paragraph instead of it was a dark and stormy day. And I call this spiced. Spiced stands for specificity, power words, imagery, compelling dialogue, internal or external, ending hooks, and deep point of view. Sure, specificity, power words, imagery, compelling dialogue, end hooks, and deep point of view. The sting of frozen rain, power word. Sorry, give me just a second. Another attack she couldn't prevent. Okay. Specificity. She didn't just get off a train. She got off the L station toward her small Chicago apartment. Give me 1 second. Sometimes my allergies close up my throat. Sorry about that. Anyway, the whole point of this is that, let's see, compelling dialogue, end hooks, deep point of view. What that does is it actually focuses your reader on what puts the character inside. Think of yourself as lowering yourself into a well. Think of yourself as lowering yourself into the well of the character. Thanks. Much appreciated.
I heard that sip of red wine.
I would like a sip of red wine. That would be great. I'm Italian. Of course, I love red wine. So I call this spiced. And I think it's really important to try to do it. So I'm going to, actually, can I get somebody to read for me? Chair with you so that I can. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'm getting my voice back, but I don't want to lose it again.
Robin, we've got about 8 minutes.
No, I got it. Okay, so I'm going to give you a deep point of view example. You're a darling. Thank you. Okay, yeah. So what I wanted to talk about is emotion and deep point of view is your most powerful weapon. So really think about deep point of view. That's when the character tells the story, not the author. So if you're an amazing painter and know tons about painting and all that, and your character's not a painter, don't use all that imagery, right? That if you're, so let's start with the beginning. So this is the beginning of a book. And he's going to just read this and we're going to talk about what we know about our character. Go ahead.
Okay. Finally reaching the landing, Deb slipped her key into the lock. Ashley better have a good reason for being here and not at her Air Force Academy dorm where she belonged. Deb shoved the door open. Her sister jumped up from the beige corduroy couch like a gun had exploded in her ear. The textbook vaulted from her hand, landing 5 feet away.
Okay. What do you know about Deb from just that?
She's afraid.
She's afraid. Okay. She's worried. Okay. What else?
She's AWOL.
She's AWOL. She's not quite AWOL, but I hear you. So this person is a student, is her sister, just to put context in there. I used some imagery here. Her sister jumped from the beige corduroy couch like a gun had exploded in her ear. Deb is around guns. She knows guns. Okay. You know a little bit. So instead of saying she came in and her sister was on the sofa, you know, I've added a little texture to it. So I'm gonna try one more. Let's see. Let's try that one.
The whir of the circling bell 212 helicopter rotors echoed through the cockpit. New Mexico's Wheeler Peak, barely visible in the dusk, loomed just east, its 13,000-foot summit laden with snow. Deborah Lansing leaned forward, the seatbelt straps pulling at her shoulders. Far, far to the west, the sun was just a sliver in the sky. It's almost dark, Deb. We have to land, Jean Russo, her local search and rescue contact, insisted.
No, that's okay. So what that is, those are the image making, picture forming words. So you can see the setting. I don't know how many of you have ever read a book where it's like talking heads and you don't know where they are. It doesn't take a ton. I don't have to write 3 pages of clouds on walls to know what's going on. I can very quickly say, she's in a helicopter. There's a lot of stuff around her. It's winter and she's on a mission. It's not complicated. Let's see. I know we're almost out of time. This is a deep point of view showing character. Go ahead and read that one and then we're
He didn't understand. The bird knew exactly what Deb wanted, and she didn't leave people behind to die. Not after Afghanistan. She had enough ghosts on her conscience. She tilted the chopper forward and came around again, sliding near the road toward Taos Ski Valley, where the church bus had been headed before it had vanished.
Thank you. So instead of spending a flashback, right, talking about what had happened to her in Afghanistan, I give a hint. What happened in Afghanistan was important. What's more important is the result it had on her. So what she does in this scene is she takes a lot of risks to save these kids because she's not going to leave anybody behind. And that's one of her issues. So while those scenes end up being pretty high powered and pretty fast paced, they also give you a lot of emotional context. Just because you're writing an exciting story doesn't mean you don't have emotion, right? Emotion is in everything that you do. So I could say a ton more, I hope, but those are the big points. And what you do to need to take your writing to the next level is understand that it's a business and make those choices. Understand what you're trying to write and how it fits in the market. And you need to make your writing, you need to take your writing to the next level by making it better, especially if you're trying to sell to traditional publishers. You need to be better than anybody else, right? You need to be better than the known quantity because they already have somebody that does X. They already have a John Grisham. You need to be, if you want to be a legal thriller, you need to do something special, right? And if you want to stand out in the crowd, you've got to do something special. So the spiced words will help you. There's lots of articles on all of those. Let's see, what else can I tell you? Don't be afraid to revise and be vicious. And be vicious at revision because something that is a contest winner is not necessarily going to be saleable. And okay, I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?